Looks like we got one person, but they're probably all waiting on my upcoming, and I can't use that. More actions. Edit. Hmm. Let me see if I can chat here. Let's see if I start the stream. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Okay. I have just gone live on my other YouTube stream. No, well, no. So I've got two people have signed on to the existing uh one. The one that I set up on Friday before I knew I was going to use StreamYard. So I set that one up, but I can't log into that one from StreamYard. I have to create a new one in StreamYard and schedule that. And so the two people who are watching right now, watching me say this, they're not going to see you, Ryan. So they need to sign off of here, or not sign off, but leave this stream and go to that stream, which is going to be a little confusing. Does that make sense? Yeah. I still don't see you. Hmm. Ryan, where are you? Exactly. Where is Ryan? Do do people hear? No, of course they can't hear Ryan. Well, maybe they can because I hear Ryan. I don't know. Yeah, you think. I wonder if I can put up a little banner that says if you're not seeing Ryan, go to the other. It works. Oh, there you are. Okay. I can add to stream. And now I hear myself twice. I don't hear Ryan. Oh my God, we got three people. Okay, one.
Inaugural stream. Look at this. Any better?
I hear you.
Yeah.
And I don't hear me.
And then I think what you can do in Zoom, if you pick a different speaker, you won't hear yourself from Zoom as well.
That's why I'm hearing myself.
Yeah, well, that's what I did.
Should I just stop the Zoom?
That could work.
What's going to happen? We're still going to be able to hear each other, right?
Yeah. I just went through and like stopped the video and stuff like that.
Okay.
So
I'm going to stop it.
background.
I'm leaving.
We're good.
I'm leaving the Zoom.
We're good. So of course this is the third camera here. This is like if all else fails, then use the MacBook camera.
Okay. I've ended the Zoom.
There we go. All right.
Okay. Well, this is
professional.
Wow, you are Ryan MacLean. I'm just Matt.
Ooh,
okay.
Just Matt. Oh, you're so much more than just Matt.
Matt Williams. What did you say? What's your whole thing?
Oh, I think it's just my Twitter handle.
With Twitter as well.
This is from a Microsoft thing, I think. From
edit name.
Gotta make sure the hi-hats are good. Oh, you can't see ask me about my keyboard. Oh well.
Well, hey, I got another thing we can try next time.
Oh, we got Boo as well. Awesome.
So we're gonna try rather than using Streamyard. So my paid trial,
yep.
I'll cancel it. I've got one of the since you've got a A10 Mini.
Mm-hmm.
I just got one of those stream bridges.
Oh, nice. So yeah, we could do like a remote stream bridge over ATMP.
It's going to be coming over there in the mail whenever it arrives. It's supposed to arrive today.
Fantastic.
So then we can skip all this.
Yeah, I don't mind this. I mean, I'd say it works at the end. So I think today what we wanted to talk about was
I'm dark.
Keyboards, and I don't know if you want to talk about mechanical keyboards or anything. I see Boo's here, so I'll talk about what Boo was asking, and then maybe I can get into my tirade. I'll try to keep the soapbox short a bit, but I think Boo's question was something around like, hey, I've got like one of the Mac keyboards, and I've hit it so hard over so many years that it's like worn through, and I don't know what to get next. I think what he's saying is like, if you were to optimize for something that's silent and small, yeah, he's saying he's got money. Let's go. Boo, not to bury the lead too much. I mean, I kind of talked about it on Twitter, but I feel like the best replacement for that keyboard is like that keyboard again, like a replacement. They're good keyboards, but when we're talking about mechanical keyboards, the biggest problem is silent is hard. Yeah. And getting so you're saying low profile. I think low profile in the keyboard community means something different. So the case is low profile, but then the keys stick up a ton.
Well, there's also the Carol chocolate.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go to, the chalk keys, right? And then you're thinking about like what keycaps to use.
Yeah.
But I guess what I really wanted to talk about is like what is the incentive? What are the wants and needs? And not to be too businessy about it, but like Boo has probably a need to be silent, and maybe a need to have a keyboard that can handle some of you. So those would be the needs. The wants I hear about all the time is like, hey, I want something reprogrammable. I want something that looks nice. It has like that geek factor, that geek appeal kind of thing. Yeah. But Matt, I think you and I actually have differing opinions when it comes to like what the ideal keyboard might be. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on it as well. So you mentioned chalk, which is like that's a good call out. What else should people?
But they're different. But they're like they're whole different switch connectors. So you can't just like swap out if your keyboard supports multiple. You'd be able to switch them out. You can't.
Yeah. So like the hot swap keyboards, for example, you can't just put the chalks in there most of the time. I don't think I've seen any yet that support them. But they're low profile, so they're quite thin and small. Right. The keycaps that go on top of them are also thin and small. But I do wonder a little bit, like when you're talking about like a keyboard for programming and stuff like that, like when would you start thinking about layout? I guess is what I was thinking. Like when would Matt talk about layout?
I swapped out layout before I got into alternate keyboards.
Okay. And how did you do that? Did you just like put stickies on your keyboard or just like not look at it?
Just don't look at it. And I ended up, I chose a layout based on no good information. I mean, no good reason. I knew I wanted to try out a different layout, but which one do you try? And that you can go with what everyone tries, Dvorak, or if you're a little weird, you go with Colmac. And then I think I read one article that said, "Well, those are great, but Workman's better." So, and that was like enough. I probably skimmed the article, and have changed my life because of just that one skimming, which is a bad idea. And And so I use Workman, and actually on the MacBook keyboard, I use Workman Dead, which is
Okay.
so it's a Workman keyboard layout normally, and then if you hit the comma key, then it's a different layout, which is it mostly has like number keys and all the programmer like open paren, close paren, really easy. Um, but so I use that on the MacBook. I'm of course pointing at my MacBook.
Mhm.
Um, and um, and then I used
But
you can
I guess my question is like, what is the incentive there? Do you think you code faster with a different layout?
no.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
I think I
But you
think I could
might,
have
you
I
might
think
when
I
you're
could
talking
have
about params and
invested
stuff, right?
time
Yeah.
in getting the I don't know, Mavis Beacon QWERTY, just Mavis, any sort of typing program to teach me how to type correctly on QWERTY and do some practice, and I probably would have gotten there.
That is a name I've not heard in quite some time.
I feel like that software must still exist,
It's got to. And Mavis Beacon for me as well was like that guiding light for
right?
how to learn how to use your keyboard. It didn't necessarily touch on like programming and the keys
No,
that you might use
no.
for that,
But
but it was huge.
where's the Q key? Where's the W key? Can you do it without seeing the keyboard?
Yeah, yeah, you got it. Now, did you have so this is kind of digging in a little bit into the past, but did you have like formative training in high school or junior high that kind of like set
I
you into a
did.
layout?
Thank goodness I did, because that's why I graduated.
Really? Like a bonus credit or something?
Yeah, it was a bonus half credit, and along with something else, I don't know, like shop or something for the other half of the year. And because of that, the one class that I failed my senior year, uh, it was replaced, and I was able to get my diploma. Although I didn't get my diploma when everybody else did. I got a little letter saying you don't have enough credits to graduate, which of
Oh
course
no.
made my mother say, "Oh, of course, you've done it again."
Yet
Made for a
again.
horrible weekend. But on the Monday, we would go back into the office at Carl Gable Senior High School down in Miami, and they say, "Oh yeah, you failed one class, yeah. Oh, and then here you did an extra credit, and then another extra credit.
Nice.
Oh, and then the like person in charge of adding up numbers says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Here's your diploma. It was already printed. They just didn't give it to me." So,
That's you kind of touched on another thing there that's pretty interesting to me. So one, you've been using a layout for a long time. The second is like that person realizing there's a mistake made. At any point when you picked a different layout, did you give it like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month? When did you realize like, hey, this isn't for me? Like Coleman doesn't work for me, Workman doesn't work for me. Well, how long did you give it before you decided that it didn't gel?
well, I mean, how long did I give Workman? Well, I'm still using Workman. So
I think it was Workman Dead though, right? It's a
Workman Dead,
slightly
I'm still using.
okay. So that's the one
Well, I
you
mean,
started off with.
it's you don't it on other keyboards. I think I've used, rather than the comma key, I'm using different keys for the dead key.
Right.
Um, but so I mean, when did I get good enough with Workman so that it was
That's
about the
definitely the
same
follow-up. Exactly.
as
Yeah.
QWERTY?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I hear stories about like, oh, I was fully up and running in 2 weeks, or I was ready to go in 6 months or a year. No, 2 years. 2 years commitment to get
That
to the
sounds
point
about
where I
right.
was,
Yeah,
yeah.
that tracks.
And I'm definitely faster than I was on QWERTY, but that's not saying much because I was horrible on QWERTY.
And we talked a little bit about layouts, but like in terms of switch type, was there an adjustment
Yeah.
period for you with
Well,
switch types or?
so I mean, the first few external keyboards I started using, obviously the Apple keyboard,
Mhm.
but then there was this guy, the Type Matrix.
Oh, that's
And I think
nice.
this was my first one that was the ortholinear.
Right. Yeah, we didn't talk about that yet. So ortho
Yeah.
meaning like almost in a grid.
And then I've actually got a cover, which I think is Yeah, so this cover goes over it, and that might be, yeah, this is Workman, I think.
And those sounds like
Um,
browns. I could be wrong, but like what switch
these are
type is it?
not. No, I
Not
mean
browns.
these are just it's like a little chiclet keyboard. I mean it's
Okay, so it's pretty low
um,
profile though, or
yeah,
pretty not
yeah,
very high.
yeah. I mean it's
Oh yeah,
super
look at
thin.
that. There you
Yeah.
go, Boo. This is where the money can
Um,
go.
so this is nice, except it's really weird. I mean the enter and
Right,
backspace is in the middle.
right,
What's up
right.
with that?
Now that's something I want to touch on. So that to me is a need. So I've noticed that we were talking a little bit about the programmer keys, but my pinkies will hurt the longer I code for it because I'm always holding shift to hit all the keys. And anytime I
Yeah,
can use my thumb, that's why I'm really interested in like the Moonlander and stuff like that.
right,
Anytime I can use my thumb for stuff, like I will learn.
right.
It'll probably
Yeah,
take 2 years, but like I will learn to use those
yeah.
thumbs because they're so much stronger than the rest of my fingers. At least in terms of me, I don't know. Maybe your pinkies are a lot more developed than mine are, but like holding shift to hit all of the things that you need in coding, even if it's just like YAML or something like that, in quotes is just it can be awful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so got my bucket of goodies. So this was keyboard number 2 for me. Where's the light?
Is that a Moonlander?
This is the ergonomics EZ.
Ah, right.
So I got this when it was still a Kickstarter or Indiegogo. And I didn't really know anything about switches. And so I just chose their default, like, which is cherry brown. Or actually, no, they're not cherry. They are Gatoron.
Oh, Gatoron? Yeah. Gatorons are pretty popular. Just like
Um,
alternative.
and so I went with that, and it was good. Generally good. This is the first edition, so
Right.
you cannot change the switches just by pulling them out. You have to
Desolder.
desolder and resolder. Um,
And were you having pain at that time? Is
No.
that why you went to that, or you
No.
just want to try something new?
it's a fun toy. I have no reason to
Because I know
do
a
this
lot of
stuff.
people, yeah, I know a lot of people will gravitate towards like the MS Natural is kind of like the first ergonomic keyboard that they come to. And this is again like this is the soapbox I'm on right now, which is like want versus need. So it sounds like
Right.
Matt had a want, whereas for me,
Matt totally had a want.
yeah, for me it was a need. Like I've got pain. What do I do? And I think Boo's probably saying it's like a need to have a keyboard that works, but less so like an urgent need kind of thing. And I think that's where like the easy answer here is like it depends, right? Like what kind of keyboard should I get for my first Mac keys? It depends, and that's kind of what I want to say is like if you've got a need to not hurt yourself, right? Like our two main incentives are like it's pursuance of pleasure or like avoidance of pain is why we like go out and look for stuff. And if it's avoidance of pain, then like I mean, obviously look at your posture and things like that, your desk setup, your chair, that kind of thing. Because I really don't think the layout is the biggest problem with a lot of that stuff.
No.
Though I will say that using your thumbs is a lot. But the neat stuff, like if you want something looking weird, like kind of wild, I think is what Boo said in the chat. Like, yeah, the ergonomics easy definitely looks wild, especially if you get those like black on black keys that Matt was showing, because you look like a super hacker, right? Like, so like you sit at your desk and they're like, how do I even use this? I don't know where to start.
Well, yeah, I mean,
in a pairing session, you hand them that keyboard and then they get all intimidated.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked at a number of places where if you leave your keyboard or leave all your stuff out, well, somebody's going to take over and just start using your computer and log in as them and
like
start using. And when they see my machine and my blank keyboard, it's like, I mean, even if they're able to log in somehow, all the keys are wrong because it's a different layout. It's like, what's going on here?
Yes, it's definitely like a cool factor, I would say. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely not the reason I did it, but it's a nice benefit.
Yeah, totally.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
you go.
Yeah, the other thing that's interesting to me about mechanical keyboards, and again, I kind of showed off this one before, so I'm using that standard Mac keyboard. This one's GIS layout, so it's a little bit different than that's the Japanese layout, mostly because I like that enter
here
key.
too.
Yeah. So those keyboards are great, but what interests me a lot in mechanical keyboards is that software delivery chain or like supply chain for your firmware for your keyboard. And I know this is sounding like super out there, like security land, that kind of thing, but honestly, the firmware that goes into a keyboard is simple enough that most people can understand what's actually happening. and therefore can get involved. And listen, I'm not saying that there's keylogger firmware out there or anything like that, but I will talk a little bit about like Razer and Logitech tools
Right.
that will track how many keys that you press. It's
Yeah.
essentially a keyer, but it will allow you to see like, hey, which keys am I hitting a lot, and what can I
Right.
concentrate on? Which is super interesting. In the open source keyboard firmware world, you can define like layout, like we were talking about, but you can also define those macros,
Yeah.
those leader keys to do things that you want. Now, a caveat here is like, do not program a hotkey for your password. Most of the firmware will say that in it, but don't do that. Like when we're talking about this, like please, like, like approach open software with like a security in mind. But I feel like that open firmware software supply chain is maybe a little bit different in this case, where it's really accessible. And maybe like for the Arduino crowd or the people who really like Raspberry Pis, that's a good way to go to it, because using an Arduino, you can basically build a keyboard. And I brought some toys too, but I've got a small little Macropad here, which I think is probably the easiest for everybody.
What?
Now this is, if you play Street Fighter, you can probably figure out what I'm doing here, but I took a 24 key numpad basically, which is really where I'd suggest most people start, as a numpad. Start with a numpad, different switches, everyone needs a numpad.
Right.
You don't need the numpad on the right of your keyboard, like Matt was saying. It just gets in the way of your mouse, and then you're sitting like this, all crooked, and it's not good. But with a Macropad or a numpad like this, you can program these keys to do other things in your operating system, much like, and I think we were talking about this the other day, the Streamdeck. And that's why I think the Streamdeck is getting more and more popular, is because people are realizing, like, hey, when I can define the layout of how I use the computer, that's really empowering. And they're like, there's a big paradigm shift there. It's like, I can get this to do what I want when I want.
Yeah.
One hit. Oh, I think we saw it there for a bit. Kind of
Streamdeck.
Yeah. And I feel like when people experience that Streamdeck experience is when they really realize, like, hey, I've got control over how I interact with the computer.
Yeah.
This is next level. And maybe that, like, again, it's maybe more of a want, but like when you can unlock that, I feel like that's where, for me, that human computer interface really becomes like force multiplier, and you can really, like, you're cooking with gas. It's you're good to go.
The problem, I mean, one of the nice things about, well, I guess good thing and bad thing about, just having 6 buttons on that thing versus mine, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 16, 32 buttons.
And multiple layers, right? Because
and multiple layers. I mean, so I'm using Companion, and I have 999 layers times 32. I'm never going to use that many. But even filling the ones I got, what do I do? What are the key motions? What are the key things that I need to replicate in a single button? That's hard to figure out.
I totally agree. And when
you have only 6, then you want to make sure, do you have the right 6?
You're using them wisely, So one of the things I really like about the Streamdeck is, ignoring the previous and next pages, it can tell what app you're in. And of course, it does this via software, and you don't have control of the software, but taking that as a given, if you're in the Finder, or if you're in like Internet Explorer, Explorer, Windows File Explorer, it can change the shortcuts that it shows you depending on the app that it's in. And that for me was like a light bulb moment. Yeah. It's like, you've probably seen these before. Remember the F key, like things that you print off and put over the F keys on the old IBM keyboards? Yeah. Like depending on the app you're in, if you're in WordPerfect, you plunk that down. If you're in like, what was that? Anyway, if you're in Keybase,
I have one for my MacBook that would overlay, I don't know, Final Cut Pro, all the shortcuts.
Yeah. And I've got one of those here as well, because like, of course I do, but these are just, so this is sticker bombed. It's, but it's got, I think we can focus there, sort of like Photoshop shortcuts on it. And that's very similar. So I was thinking the same thing. It's like, if these keyboards are more of an input method, and less so of like a keyboard that you're writing with. And if I wanted to get it to do things on the computer, and one of them is like maybe open Excel, paste from Notepad, that kind of thing, like that kind of macro, I feel like that's a real time saver. And then I'm not just getting rid of like the holding shift with my pinky, I'm getting rid of like a whole workflow. Which is where I thought things kind of, kicked into high gear a little bit. And what I love about the Streamdeck, sorry, I'm done a bunch here, but what I love about the Streamdeck is, has that picture, and I feel like those legends are very very important. And like buying a key set like that, I think it was $120. Like, it's not cheap just to get keys that are specific to Photoshop. And if I want to change that, that's like at least an hour of work plus some money, or I buy another keyboard and do it, whereas the Streamdeck can do all of that kind of in one. So
and I think that So I use the Stream Deck in a very different way. And so I use different software. I mean, I don't use the Stream Deck software, and I don't even use it on my machine. My main workstation is my MacBook Pro. The Stream Deck's not even hooked up to the MacBook Pro. It's not hooked up to the iMac. It's hooked up to a little Raspberry Pi behind my desk. So I don't get some of those like two main benefits of the Stream Deck that you just mentioned.
Right.
I don't even get.
But on the other hand, I'd say that Raspberry Pi software is pretty cool, though. What was it again? What was the name?
So I'm using Companion.
Companion.
It's made by a company called BitFocus out of Norway or Sweden, one of those places up there. And there's like 400 plugins for that piece of software. And so I have
the joys of working from home. So I think what I'm hearing there is that there's like an ecosystem of a lot of people who are in there, like adding plugins and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, so I have one whole row of buttons for just the TP-Link Casa power strip, and this thing now directly communicates with that power strip, and I can turn on the one outlet for my GH5, another outlet for my ATEM, another outlet for the audio interface. And
so it's almost great. like an IoT / multimedia little dashboard.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, that's how I open up the blinds. Well, you can't see the blinds, but there's blinds right there.
Yeah,
see the light. Yeah. So I have another button that goes, and that. So there's not a Lutron plugin for this, but there is a Home Assistant plugin, and I can control my Lutron stuff like my lights and my blinds via Home Assistant. But of course, in order to take advantage of all these things, now you are complicating things so much. There's no way a regular human is going to go through all these steps. And it's only because we're total geeks that we're willing to suffer.
There's an added benefit there, right? Like what is the what do we call this? Like the acceptance factor, right? So if you have a significant other, I think one of the things you and I were talking about off camera is like you can use that setup with multiple computers at the same desk.
Right.
Which is that's something the Stream Deck and a keyboard can't really do that easily.
Right. And the use case the reason why I have it hooked up to a Raspberry Pi is my MacBook's not always here. Right. And my wife is sitting right behind. She has a little desk right over there, right behind me, in the darkness. If she wants to open up the blinds, well, now we have a switch on the wall. But before we had a switch on the wall, she can just come up to the button that says blinds, tap it, and it opens up the blinds. Tap the lights on, and the lights come on.
I think my mom's in the chat saying like she's having a hard enough time asking, okay, hey Google, and I wanted to get to that actually because like when we're talking about human computer interfaces, like and talking about keyboards and Stream Decks and stuff like that. So I think one thing we're talking about, like you just mentioned, is having like an easy to use interface with a big button that says open blinds is massive. The other thing I've noticed here on my end is like just having a light switch is handy, but on the like the Home Assistant / Hey Google, ask Alexa or Siri, that kind of thing. Like what she's saying is like that it's almost like a third hand. So if I can just say it, and I think mine's reacting here. Sorry for anyone else who's got this on speaker, it's reacted at home. But I think that other way of just using your voice as well gets us more into like the assistive technology. And I don't mean like assistive in like assisting you, but like for some people, it's actually easier to not use a keyboard and use like a different interface. Like is it a voice? Is it a foot switch? Is it something like that? And I know we strayed a little bit from keyboards, but this is where I think like the wants versus needs, very, very interesting. So what I want is a way to easily turn on my lights when I don't need. It's like further complication into other things, but like a switch on the wall is a really powerful paradigm, to me at least, like a mechanical switch that you can just smack, the lights turn on, or an easy way, like a keyword to wake up and say, turn on the lights.
Stella is screaming about something. I got to go. 1 second.
No worries. I'll hold down the fort. So I think at this point in time, like if there's any questions, definitely put them into the chat. Matt and I have done a lot of work with keyboards, work in tech, so that we've hit like maybe pain points or areas where solving these problems is complicated but worthwhile because we're going to be doing it for a long time. So when we're talking about like pain from hands and things like that, like it's real. Like sometimes it can cause you to not be able to.
Jade's out here.
It's important to figure out how you can do it.
Hey.
What
I'm
about
back.
a big tablet? Yeah, I agree with the big tablet. Yeah. So I was just asking for comments in the chat. So we're getting some stuff here, which is
big tablet.
Great.
Yeah.
Big tablets are not a bad one. I've seen some people. It's part of like their home install kind of thing. You just add iPad, and then it runs an app, and then the app will do the stuff for you.
One of the YouTubers I follow is a I can't remember what his name is, Matthew something, Midland Pictures I think is his company, and he does a lot of Final Cut stuff and a bunch of other things. But he had this talk with a friend of his, I think a friend of his, and who's also a professional editor for TV shows and that type of thing. And he's got 3 screens in front of him for all the editing stuff for music and video. But then below, well, there's a 1 or 2 Stream Decks, but also 3 iPads that are in front of him just for all the buttons, just because he doesn't want to have to remember a lot of shortcuts, but he's got everything all set. So one for just the mixing panel for Logic, and another one that is dedicated to other buttons that, yes, he can go to another pane on the Stream Deck, but he just has one dedicated for something. And then another one that's just dedicated to the lights in the room, so he can get it just right. And I think he was talking about, anything he can do to reduce the friction and just, once he's in a flow, stay in that flow. And if he has to turn on a light or turn off the AC or whatever, you can just hit that button and continue working and not leave that flow.
I can't agree more. And we talked a little bit about so staying in the flow is important, but also not interrupting the flow. And I think in the chat, we were talking a little about Home Assistants and stuff like that. And on your end, you're talking about the app Home Assistant. And I feel like what's kind of marries these and to make this more about what our jobs are, the fact that those APIs on the back end are pervasive and that people want them allows us to use maybe not the same code in both places,
right?
But an Alexa assistant might be similar to a Lutron assistant and a Home Assistant. So your preferred interface may be a keyboard or a Stream Deck.
Right.
Your wife's preferred interface may be like a voice assistant or a switch on the wall. But it really depends on the person, and being able to meet people where they are with this is this is where the soapbox, yes, we're finally there. Because back in the 80s, it was just a pipe dream. Even touchscreens weren't a thing back then. Being able to have a display that could change depending on something else happening and hitting different buttons. Is the light currently on or off?
Right.
It's one of those things. Am I hitting the switch to turn it on or to turn? I can't tell. That's not always obvious for people.
Yeah.
Whereas on the light switch, because it rocks, it's obvious that it's on and you're turning it off.
Yeah, and it's one of the neat things about Home Assistant or even that power strip I had mentioned. It not only has controls, I think it's just a REST interface.
Yep.
To turn it on and to turn off, but there's also an endpoint that responds with the state. What's the current state of that switch, of that outlet?
Right.
It's on, it's off.
Right.
My blinds are open or closed, or 50% open, or whatever it is, or lights are on. Now, some of the tools use a standard interface, REST. Even these Elgato key lights. It's a simple, RESTful interface.
And I'm using one as well. Yeah.
Yeah. But then there's the Lutron. Man, is it
DMX or something? What was it?
It's Telnet.
Oh, well, that's what keyboards are. They're all serial. I was going to get there eventually. Yeah, it's all serial underneath, right?
Yeah, it's Telnet, and each say a light has an index value of 1, 2, 3, let's say, and then on off is going, or depending on what you want to do, there's another index code 1 through 10 of what action you want to do or what status you want to get out of it, and then what's the value you want to push to it. So it's a series of numbers, and you have to just know what's the right pattern of numbers to provide in this telnet string, and it doesn't give any feedback, or it does if you ask for It's really weird. It's
That is
horrible,
so good.
horrible,
It's so
horrible.
good. What a terrible
Yeah.
user interface for when you're trying to code on
Yeah.
it, right? And also like immediately I'm thinking about security. Whenever someone says telnet, it means like
Yeah.
to me it means unauthenticated and like
Yeah.
text, right?
Yeah. And in order to get access to that, because we're using Radio Raw 2, which is like not Caseta, but a level up, which requires a system integrator. That system integrator has to say, yes, you are allowed to turn on that telnet interface. But normally it's not accessible to regular homeowners.
So when you're saying system integrator, you mean like a consultant or an installer or
somebody who
dedicated
whose business is dedicated to lighting.
Yeah, that just sounds like a heavy lift.
Yeah. And so the folks that we used also, or the previous owners used, also set up the home network. They also were doing all the Wi-Fi. That's not their business, but they were setting that up. And so there's this router vendor, Luxor, that is dedicated, that is focused on lighting people. And, so building pretty good networking equipment, but with the intention that it's going to be installed by this lighting person. So I don't know. I got rid of all that stuff and went with, I think I went with Omada from TP-Link. But anyway.
There was a comment in the chat saying like, hey, the child was making some noise. Good job going to.
Yes. She is.
It's fun, but also,
Yeah, so my wife got back after picking her up from the preschool, and often she's asleep. So she's in the back seat, zonked out, and my wife's gone inside. But then sometimes she wakes up and likes to go from the front seat to the back seat and pretend she's steering, and then she was screaming. She was screaming for some reason. I don't even know why. When I went to get her, she said, I'm having fun. Go away.
Oh, okay then.
Yeah, so
I mean this is a mode. Kids do like to scream sometimes. The other one in the chat was kind of like how we think about input methods, be it keyboard or what have you, assistants, mice, that kind of thing, for an aging population. And I think that's kind of where I put you and myself in, is like people who started using computers as they came out, but also were getting older. But then I look at my wife's family in Japan, for example, that country has a very aging population, and there's difficulties around like, how do I make something, I don't know, like how do I turn on and turn off the Wi-Fi? Like I don't want the Wi-Fi overnight. What does that look like? Is it a button on the router? Is it a thing on the wall? Is it some phone app? Like what do I need to do in order to make sure that when like I leave the house, no one's using my network, kind of thing? It's a concern that I've seen come up. Whereas like maybe it's a cultural thing, but also like if there's a want for this or a desire to keep things secure when you're not home, what does that interface look like? And how do we grow with people? Like when we're looking at like a washing machine or maybe like a dishwasher or a fridge or something like that, which are computers these days, what does that UI look like? And do I need a phone app or like, do I need a website? How do we approach this in a way that's safe, so safe and secure, but also you won't hurt yourself. But at the same time, and I'm trying not to make this an ages thing, but like, as you're making it accessible to people of many ages, what does that look like? If you're in the car with the child lock turned on, you can't get out, so you're screaming for your dad. How do you get, like, is there a switch that you? How do we approach people at different ages in order to give them an interface that they can use? I guess is what I don't know. I don't have an answer. You don't need to give me one either, but
no, I don't know. I mean, my mother is, I should know how old she is, 84, 83, somewhere in there. And getting her to technology is hard. Yeah.
It is. And I think we forget because we're in it all the time, right? We're in the thick of it.
I want an answer there. I don't have an answer there.
I think there's a market there as well. Like if people need, like when we're talking about incentives, if people need like $1 to chase, there's certainly a market there. And the market is growing rather than decreasing. So the amount of people who are getting past, let's say 50, 60, 70 is only increasing over time as we have more people and those people are interacting with stuffing. Yeah, 80's on the edge. Yeah, maybe. But like if there's people driving cars at 80, that means that they're interacting with computers at 80. And it's certainly something that we think about. Now, one of the things, and again, I'm going to kind of feed you a little bit here, but one of the things that you used to talk to me about was the love of the touch bar. So for people who haven't used a Mac, there's like a little screen on a Mac that's kind of like where your F keys might be on a normal computer. Right. It's kind of like a little screen that you can put whatever you want in there. And most people, and I think I'm kind of in
you could also call it the best addition to the MacBook of all time.
Right. Whereas most people think that this is worthless, and I feel like it's just because they haven't found an app for it. So I was going through your GitHub repos, and I saw that like you had one for reminders, which I thought was really interesting to me, like having your to-do list in there. How did that work out? Are you still using it, or have you picked something else?
I use it. I have an M1 Mac, so it doesn't have the.
It's gone.
It was exciting to get this M1 Pro Max 64 gigs of memory and 4 terabytes of I mean, it was super exciting to get this laptop, but the fact that it doesn't have a touch bar is painful. Because so many people are just, I mean, I don't understand. So people will leave the touch bar with the default settings, which is probably just set it to the function keys, which is silly. Or set it to
it's worse than that. It like hides all your brightness and stuff like that underneath context sensitive things. So like you normally want the brightness to be there all the time.
And so are these people also, well, they got a MacBook computer, so they're just going to use leave Pages on it and Safari. Don't install Chrome because that would mean installing extra pieces. Well, if you're okay with installing Chrome or some other game or some other application that you use, Figma as a designer or whatever the other tools are, if you're okay with installing those tools, why aren't you okay with installing one other tool to make your touch bar really useful?
What I will say about Mac people is there tends to be something called, and I'm stealing this from like the Software Defined Talk podcast, but they call it the defaults lifestyle. And there is a cadre of people. One, it's kind of like that curve, the trough of dissolution. Right. So you start out with the defaults. And then you want to customize everything. Maybe you go down like the Arch Linux path and you want to make your own operating system all the way. You're making mechanical keyboards, you're soldering things. But after a while, you may actually find that you want to get back towards the default or maybe like opinionated defaults. And I think that's what you're talking about. Is like once you've gotten past, I need to customize everything, you figure out like what a rational default is for you. Right. And then I feel like the touch bar, to me at least, didn't have rational defaults. Is why I didn't really use it. And then maybe if even reminders was in the touch bar as like hey, look at me, I'm here, you can use me, or notes, like the actual notes app, maybe it's Pages. I don't know. Pages is all right. But like maybe that would have helped people adopt it more, because I do feel like this is that iPad screen or whatever that's customizable. And I was hoping to see it appear in like the normal keyboards I'm trying to put in the frame.
I would love to have.
It never happened.
So I mean, for me, the biggest uses I had for the touch bar was I loved the fact that I could have my, and I did, my GitHub status. Based on the current folder that I'm in, what is the current GitHub status? Because, yes, I can have that in the terminal, but often I want to record a video, and I don't want the person watching a video about, I don't know, something else know about my GitHub status on the day that I recorded the video, which is totally irrelevant. So I want to have that GitHub status available to me on a screen that I can see that nobody else can see, but also my Todoist status. You know, how many tasks have I got today? Was it my next 3 or 4 Todoist tasks? And I saw all those on the touch bar, and it was great. And I was forced to look. Oh, there's still 3 things I haven't done today that I need to get done. I want to get down to 0. And it's always in front of me. I don't have to keep another window open on my desktop. I don't have to have a menu bar, whatever. And the other one was, what is my next calendar appointment?
Right.
And so what as exactly what time, and so the context of in the toolbar or in the touch bar was amazing. And then I was using a add-on for Better Touch Tool, and so if you just put 2 fingers anywhere on the touch bar and slid to the right, it made the brightness brighter, the display brighter, and
that's
two
nice.
fingers anywhere on the touch bar and move to the left, and it made it darker.
Because that's what I'm always looking for. Yeah.
3 fingers on there, swipe to the right, got louder. Swipe to the left, got softer, the volume. And that, I mean, I use that all the time. And then, for some other, I think I had, if you hold down the control key, then you had basically like the dock was on there. And if you press the command key, you could do like window management. I want this thing taking the left third, click that, tap that button. And then you could also, with Better Touch Tool, you could turn on haptic feedback so that when you press the button, you felt the little bump in the computer.
Oh, that's really cool.
It was great. I love that.
So one of the comments was like so simple. I'm not sure if this is sarcastic or not, but I will say like hidden UI is one of those things that really bothers people. So to circle back to like mechanical keyboards, there's like layers that we're talking about. Yeah. And in this case, you're talking about like, what do they call them? Like multi-touch gestures, I think is what they're generally called, where like typically you'll figure them out by mistake or like want to turn it off because it gets in your way. But sometimes when you're defining these, like making that on-ramp easier, if we're going to talk about like what people who are like younger and older may have a harder time with, hidden UI is like one of those things where it's often difficult to see. In Better Touch Tool or any of those tools, did they have like a getting started guide? Because what I found is that these are getting better and better. Like the training.
I mean, unless you're willing to invest the time in really understanding what you can do with this piece of software, it's hopeless.
So we need
there are no. Yeah, I mean, there's no good defaults. Or
that's unfortunate.
Yeah, and even once you do, the options are still confusing. And so you get it to spend the half hour or 5 hours configuring it so it's just right, and then forget that knowledge, and that's your configuration until you spend the 5 hours again to tweak it again. So it's there's no easy. I think because Better Touch Tool is created by one person, and the plugin for Better Touch Tool that I was using was created by one person. And so that one person focused on building a great tool, leaving out any easy on-ramp for that tool.
Right. And this is where I think it comes down to community. So when you were talking about the Raspberry Pi software, what I was hearing is it has a vibrant community. And generally that means that like if there's not a getting started guide, there might be a forum post that will like walk you through what you need to do. And I feel like once you hit a certain amount of people, like the community starts helping each other with this kind of stuff. So what I love about mechanical keyboards is maybe not the keyboards, is more like the community and the software and the people coming up with new ideas, like making those little worlds and keycaps and stuff like that. The artisan keycaps. I found that like super, super interesting to me. It's less so about functionality and more about that kind of like goodwill or wholesome.
Right. Getting that community is hard. I mean, what used to be we, now it's you at Datadog with the public Slack. I mean, having that community helping each other out. I mean, there are some channels that support sticks to and is answering questions about. And then there are there's a learning center channel that's just and those of us who were on the training team would answer questions that were training related. And I think we always wanted that community to be a lot more of users helping users. I don't know if it really has achieved that yet. I think that's a challenging.
Like, to hit that apex or that cusp or making sure that you're at least going towards that goal is tough.
And then there's another one that I look at a lot is the Discord for Obsidian, note-taking tool. And there, I mean, everybody's helping everybody, and there is that community where I don't know if it's because there's this assumption that a company like Datadog with X number of thousands of people working for the company, they must have the resources. And a company like Obsidian, where there's 3 developers or 4 developers building this tool, obviously they don't have that. So we need to step in to, I don't know,
Yeah,
I don't know
I would
why
say
that
there's
has a
certainly,
community.
yeah, there's certainly a little bit of that for sure. I see that,
Yeah.
whereas like when like an early stage startup generally will have a
Hmm.
lot more. Like I look at Dark all the time.
Hmm.
I think I've talked to you before about Dark Playing, and I watch that community
Yeah.
because I want to see, just
Have you
just
done
because it
anything
was
with it?
not really. I
No.
built a
Okay.
couple of crusty things, but
Yeah.
I think what's maybe more interesting to me is because it's a nascent community watching it grow, and what I find sort of I guess a little bit sad sometimes is where there's gatekeeping. So in like the mechanical keyboard community, there was a little bit. It's gotten better, which is nice, but there's a bit of
Right.
gatekeeping. Like you don't even know what
Yeah.
the switch is. I'm not going to help you, which is terrible because people are coming to you with like this positivity and they want to learn. So
Right.
like you might say on Twitter, "Hey, my keyboard's broken. What
Right.
do I do? How do you help me?" And I can say, "Oh, you got to get all these switches." And like,
Right.
if it's not an IBM model like M,
Right.
then are you even keyboarding or whatever? There's a lot of like those memes, which I mean, some of it's in jest, but sometimes it might hurt the other person on the other end. They might not understand that this is like an
Yeah.
established meme that people put around. And then some of that's like Sean was saying about defaults, right? So when you get to the enterprise level, when you get up to this
Yeah.
point, it's like, does Datadog not even know that this should be default? And like sometimes maybe we
Yeah.
don't, or like if we're talking about infra, like do they not even know that what I really need
Yeah.
is to like log into not only Kubernetes but this too? Like have they
Right.
thought about this? And
Right.
sometimes like no, like please tell me, like
Yeah.
have the community tell you that you can get in there and do it. And what I love about mechanical keyboards now is that we've reached a certain point where people are coming up with maybe rational defaults, but also realizing like some of this stuff no one's ever going to touch. Like they're not going
Yeah.
to need it, so remove it from the firmware.
Right.
And I think Tap Dance
Right.
was one of those. Have you ever played with Tap Dance at all?
No.
Tap Dance is kind of like it's a bit of the firmware that you can include, but makes it a lot bigger in terms of file size. It doesn't work on every chip, and it's great, but it can do things like I think it's called dancer mode, so dasher and dancer. So if you hit shift, you hold it, it'll work like a normal shift key, and you can hit others. If you double tap it, it might go into caps lock, or if you hit it once, it
Okay.
might start a curly brace for you,
Yep.
or like a parentheses, depending on how you
Right.
have it in there. But again, it's hidden UI. And I
Right.
think that's why it was hidden, along with the fact that it's really big, because people would get confused about like, what is
Yeah.
my shift key doing? Like this
Yeah.
is absolutely not normal. I think this keyboard is
Yeah.
broken, that kind of thing. But what they opted for was more on the like LED light show things, which can
Yeah.
be cool.
Right.
What layer am I? You can change colors
Right.
and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But I find those, yeah, when you get to a certain size, like the question is, what are the rational defaults?
Right.
And in a lot of enterprise software, the defaults aren't rational. Like when I look
Yeah.
at the enterprise keyboard, let's just say like
Right.
the IBM layout is the enterprise keyboard. Do you need caps lock? Like let's just call it the caps lock key. Just as an
Yeah.
example, do you need it? And I think
Yeah.
Steve Jobs would say like, do you need those F keys?
Yeah.
Like is the majority using F keys or not? I don't know.
Yeah. So that, yeah, I mean, I remember when I was at Microsoft, I was there from 99 to 2004. And so one of the releases in there was XP, Windows XP and Office XP. And I think it was with XP. Maybe it would have been with 2000, Office 2000. But there were usability studies. I mean, Microsoft spends a lot of time and money on usability and making sure that they build the right products for everyone. Of course, with an audience of millions and millions and millions of people, you can't get it for everyone. And so they, there was a general thought that it's just so bloated. There's just so much stuff in there, and so they said, okay, well, we're gonna pare this down. What are the 10 most important features that you need? And they would ask everybody, and everybody had their 10 features. Nobody had the same 10 features. It was like, well, and you add it up, and well, there's all of Office, and all those are included in the 10 most important features. It just adds up to everything. And so do you really split out those products so that there's more focused products that are like Word for the lawyers and Word for an instrument person? I don't know. Or do you create this, I think with that one, I think 2000 was where Clippy came in, and XP was tried to be more intelligent about surfacing features. And so that's why those things came in, was to make sure that those 10 features for everybody kind of pops up for you and not for somebody else.
Yeah, Sean's got people don't know what they want, and
No
sometimes
one-
it's like you need to do user surveys of like
Yeah.
maybe your power user is like one level,
Right.
and then like if you're looking at like a graph of the person, like where they may go in their journey, so they start out and they become intermediate, then they become like a power user. It might be better to have like feature sets or something that adjust them. Like, I'm not sure if you've ever seen like a video game where you're like, it's a yearly one, like a FIFA, and you join in the next year and like, how experienced are you? Do you think you're intermediate, novice? They'll give you like a whole feature set based on that, but it's often difficult to figure out like where people are in the journey. And like, if I look at like our sun run, so we just had like a tiny little race here, and people will often like self-reporting is flawed, basically, is what I'm getting at. They say like, I'll hit this time kind of thing, or I'll hit this time. And then they all end up every year, they clog up the whole race because they're actually a lot slower than they think they are. And because of that, like people are faster, trying to get past the honest people and stuff like that. But there is a need to figure out like where you are, and I don't know if it's your computer license process or whatever, but where you are in your journey and what those defaults look like. And I think Microsoft, right after that, introduced a ribbon in the next version of Office. And a lot of people didn't like the ribbon, but the power users loved it because they could hide the UI and get like X number of more columns in Excel or whatever. But like that's definitely a power user feature that novices, unfortunately, really didn't like.
Yeah. And then another thing you were talking about was just discoverability of the features. I mean, Apple has done this, where they don't provide a manual with your iPhone. Maybe they just say start here, and then you should be able to discover all the features yourself. But then, and another example of that, one of the first examples I remember of that kind of user interface was with these plugins for Photoshop that I don't think they exist anymore, but it was Kai's Power Tools. Kai Kraus was the
Kai's, yes.
I know he had like the most wacky UI, and they didn't provide much instruction, and you had to discover it on your own, and you would discover more features, and because there'd be buttons like in weird places where buttons shouldn't exist. But the downside to relying on discoverability is that you hand this thing, this complicated phone, this complicated computer that's in the palm of your hand, that's more complicated, that's far more powerful than the navigation computer on the Apollo or whatever. And you're relying on somebody to press around to do things. My mother's not going to do that. She's scared she's going to break it. Well, if I press that button, I'll never be able to get back to where I was.
Now, I don't want to trigger the voice assistant, but have you noticed the voice assistants will say like, did you know? Or like, but while you're at it, would you like to?
Yeah, I hate that.
I do too, actually.
Like, shut up.
I think they're trying.
Siri, shut up. Or Stella, or not Stella. What's her name? Alexa, shut up. Oh.
Yeah, it's gonna work here too.
Yeah.
And of course, my mom's in the chat, so she's asking, "Does it sound familiar?" Right? I mean, but like, listen, you're not alone. Like a lot of people feel like if I touch this in a certain way, I might break it. And it's not, and it may be related to age, but it's not limited to age for sure.
Yeah.
Like I've certainly had like pairing with a junior programmer. They're like, "Oh, I don't want to recompile now. Like, what if something happens?
Right.
Like I didn't do this, and like I didn't prep this, and like you have to. There's a bit of guidance there, and maybe setting up some guardrails so people feel like safe, basically.
Yeah, of course. You go too far, especially as you get older. You get towards that skit on Saturday Night Live for Alexa. Did you ever see Alexa for senior citizens? Or
I feel like I did. We're bothering everyone's home assistant right now.
It was like, these people would call up random names that start roughly with an A. Amanda, Alexa, Ariana, and one of the modes was just because somebody would go on this long story, and Alexa would just. Yeah, very condescending. I think is what we're getting in the chat. The other is like my voice assistant will actually like listen for the other. So like one time I'll say one of the, because I get a few voice assistants. I'll say one of the names, and the other one will wake up and do stuff for me, which is like cool. But also, I'd really rather you didn't do that. Not your turn.
Listen, we should probably wrap it. Sorry, I could talk about keyboards and supply chain and wants versus
Well,
needs.
one thing before we end, I'll do my there's one of the keyboards I used for a long time, my Plank EZ with some nasty looking things on the top here because those are little bits of epoxy to know where the humming thing is. So that's good. And then of course, to figure out what's the right switch, you get things like this, and
didn't even
mention another one for
a switch
Kale.
tester. Yeah,
which is useless because you want to know how that key feels on all 5 fingers.
Right.
And
I think it's for sound though. Can't you kind of approximate the sound that they make?
Not really. I mean, they all kind of sound the same.
I gotta say, I don't have a lot of YouTube videos, but I built a keyboard once with multiple switches and recorded it. It was terrible, like potato quality, but it's the only one that I got that's actually nice. Because people do want to know what keys sound like on a full keyboard. And it took hours to like solder all the different switches on and stuff like that. And remember which ones they were.
And,
but
and knowing, I mean, I feel like I'm using silver fast
speed switches?
Speed. Oh, silvers or silent silvers or silent red. Anyway, some of them I would like that, but then others on the keyboard I want to be less fast.
Right.
And that's a plank lover. Excellent.
The plank is like that, but a little bit larger, right? It's a little bit longer, I think.
This is the Plank EZ.
Oh, okay. So this
is Ergodox's. And by the way, you talked about tap dance. Ergodox. I mean, one of the nice things about Ergodox is they've kind of taken all the hard stuff with QMK, the firmware, and made it so easy with their design tools. And it's got a lot of the features that you talked about with tap dance all built in.
Tap dance is really big, and it actually caused like a fork from TMK to QMK. Tap dance was kind of the main thing because once it was introduced, then
and Ergodox just has this great UI for configuring all that stuff.
So it's so smart. Like finding out where the needs are, where the bad on ramp is, and then like meeting the users there. I think is so key.
Yeah. So this was fun.
I had a good time.
How do we feel? How did an hour go by?
Yeah. two old guys ranting about keyboards. Thank you so much to the people in the chat. Like that actually really helps. Is having some questions and comments.
I will have to invite my mother. I assume this was your mother, right?
It was,
okay.
Definitely.
I'll have to invite my mother on here as well. I'll have to log in for her though, but
this is super fun.
Yeah, we should do it again. Same time next week.
I'm here.
Okay. What are we going to talk about?
Well, not mechanical keyboards.
No.
We'll find a topic.
Okay. Maybe somebody can suggest something.
Yeah, I'll take suggestions. Yeah. Let's do it. I can always talk about incentives and wants and needs for pretty much anything. All right.
Well,
see you later. Have a great day, folks.
Bye.